Welcome back to my YouTube channel, where legends and hidden histories come to life in ways you never expected. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most astonishing numismatic discoveries of all time, a story that starts quietly with a simple pocket change find but spirals into a jaw-dropping, globe-spanning journey involving secret collectors, a missing federal archive, and a 1998 D quarter that somehow became the most valuable coin in history, ultimately appraised at an unimaginable $368 million. Buckle in, because this story is unlike anything you've heard before, and it all starts with a man named Franklin McAllister, a Denver librarian with a passion for obscure coinage and forgotten mints. Franklin lived a quiet life, the kind that went unnoticed by most. His days were filled with the smell of old books, the sound of shuffling card catalog drawers, and the occasional lecture on regional history at the Denver Public Library. But Franklin had a secret hobby. Late at night, when the rest of the world wound down, he scoured boxes of old coins from estate sales, thrift shops, and flea markets, always hoping to find that elusive piece of American history that had somehow slipped through the cracks. One chilly Thursday evening in March of 2023, Franklin was sorting through a box of loose change he'd picked up for $5 at an old roadside shop outside Pueblo. The shop owner hadn't even looked twice at the coins, calling them junk drawer scraps. But Franklin noticed something odd immediately. Amid the dull copper and faded nickels, there was a single quarter with an unusually polished surface and a date that caught his eye: 1998. More specifically, the mint mark, D, for Denver. That wasn't particularly rare on its own. What was strange was the weight. It felt heavier than a normal quarter. Not drastically, just enough to be noticeable to someone who handled coins regularly. Intrigued, Franklin fetched his digital scale. The coin weighed 6.1 grams. A typical clad quarter should weigh about 5.67 grams. This discrepancy was enough to raise his curiosity several notches. He flipped the coin under the magnifier lamp and began inspecting the details. The more he looked, the more his heart began to pound. Something was off with the edge reading. It was deeper, more symmetrical. And then he saw the microscopic inscription embedded between the reed lines, something he'd never seen before on a standard quarter. It read, in perfect microengraving, Libertatem Securitas Secretum. Franklin's Latin was rusty, but he recognized enough to piece it together: liberty, security, secrecy. What was a secret motto doing hidden on a standard mint quarter? Franklin immediately knew this coin was no ordinary piece of currency. He cross-referenced it against every available database. The inscription didn't match any known commemorative series or secret mint era. He reached out to his network of fellow collectors and numismatists, but no one had heard of such a variation. That's when things started getting strange. 3 days after he posted a blurry photo of the coin in an obscure collectors forum, Franklin's library login was flagged by IT. When he arrived at work the following Monday, 2 men in suits were already waiting for him. They claimed to be from a historical research division of the Department of the Treasury. Polite but persistent, they asked to see the coin. Franklin, skeptical but curious, refused. That night, his apartment was broken into. Nothing was stolen, except the coin. Or so it seemed. Franklin had anticipated something like this and kept the actual coin hidden behind a false panel in his bookshelf. The one that was taken was a decoy quarter he'd altered to resemble the real thing. Still, the break-in confirmed what he feared. Someone very powerful knew about the coin, and they wanted it silenced. Over the next few weeks, Franklin went into hiding, reaching out only to trusted allies in the numismatic world. One of them, Dr. Eliza Mendel, was a forensic numismatist who had worked on high-profile cases involving stolen museum pieces. When she saw the coin in person, her reaction was immediate and visceral. "This is not supposed to exist," she whispered. Eliza conducted a series of non-invasive tests and discovered something shocking. The coin's composition was entirely wrong for a 1998 quarter. It contained traces of elements that had no business being in U.S. coinage: ruthenium, osmium, and most alarmingly, a rare isotope of neodymium only synthesized in lab conditions. The metallurgy alone made the coin priceless from a scientific standpoint. But the mystery deepened. Using a neutron scanner borrowed from a university lab, ELIZA discovered an internal cavity within the coin, one that housed a microetched disk of synthetic sapphire, a data storage medium rumored to have been tested by the NSA in the early 90s but never publicly confirmed. The data chip had no accessible interface. That is, until they brought it to a private lab in Boston, where a former CIA tech specialist agreed to try and crack the disk's encryption. What he found would shake the foundation of US financial history. The sapphire disk contained records of a secret minting project initiated in 1997 under the codename Project Castor. The documents revealed an experimental currency initiative intended to test traceable, high-security coins embedded with encrypted identification chips. Only 12 quarters were ever minted as part of the pilot phase, and all were believed destroyed under federal order when the project was abruptly shut down in early 1999. The project had been deemed too dangerous, too easy to exploit. The embedded chips were advanced enough to store large amounts of data and transmit via proximity RF to secret receivers. In the wrong hands, they could be repurposed as tools of surveillance or black market trade. One of those 12 coins had survived. And Franklin had found it. The revelation went viral after an anonymous leak, widely believed to be orchestrated by ELIZA, released the sapphire chip's decrypted contents to an encrypted server. The files showed evidence of illegal surveillance, secret mint contracts with foreign governments, and names of key officials involved in the cover-up. It was the biggest financial conspiracy since the Teapot Dome scandal and was about to explode into full public view. The United States Mint issued an immediate statement denying any knowledge of Project Castor. But that denial was short-lived. Within 72 hours, independent whistleblowers came forward, confirming not only the project's existence but also that the 1998 D-Quarter was indeed real. 3 separate private collectors from Switzerland, Qatar, and Japan offered Franklin private bids to purchase the coin. The highest bid? $368 million, offered by a consortium of anonymous buyers represented through a Geneva-based legal firm. The condition? Franklin would also surrender all data, notes, and research on the coin and never speak publicly about it again. Franklin declined. Instead, he donated the coin to the Smithsonian on the condition that it be publicly displayed with full disclosure of its origin. The display was unveiled in 2024, behind 6 inches of bulletproof glass, under the watch of armed guards. It became the most visited exhibit in the museum's history, but that's not where the story ends. Months after the coin's display, a second 1998 D-Quarter surfaced, this time in a Paris vault owned by a deceased coin collector who had ties to international intelligence operations. This quarter bore the same weight, same engraving, and the same internal chip. A third was found embedded in the base of a Cold War statue in Romania. Suddenly, the 12 coins of Project Castor were no longer legend, they were fact. Governments, collectors, and intelligence agencies scrambled to track the remaining 9. Each one held potentially devastating information, each one more valuable than the last. Auctions were rumored to take place in private islands and underground vaults, with prices reaching unfathomable levels. But only Franklin's coin had gone public, and only it had confirmed the full spectrum of what Project Castor had intended to achieve. To this day, no one knows who truly funded the project or why it was so suddenly buried. Conspiracies abound. Some believe the quarters were designed to identify rogue assets in the intelligence community. Others think they were prototypes for a larger project aimed at merging currency with identity tracking. Still others whisper that the coins were just the beginning of something far more elaborate, a global system of surveillance using everyday objects as silent watchers. The 1998 D-Quarter that Franklin found is now insured for its full valuation of $368 million, but it will never be sold. Its value, like its story, goes far beyond money. It represents a hidden chapter of American history, a window into a future that nearly was, and a reminder that even the most ordinary objects can hide the most extraordinary secrets. So next time you hold a quarter in your hand, take a closer look. You never know what it might be worth, not just in dollars, but in the secrets it might carry, and that's where we'll end today's incredible story. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, you know what to do. Thanks for tuning in again, and as always, keep your eyes open. The next treasure might already be in your pocket. Next, 1985 $quarter coin, everyone. Today, we are diving into one of the most extraordinary and unbelievable discoveries in the history of coin collecting. It's a story filled with mystery, conspiracy, hidden history, and staggering value. Buckle up, because this tale takes us through decades of secrets, a lost mint record, a hidden compartment in a farmhouse, and a 1985 $quarter that shook the numismatic world when it was revealed to be worth $456 million. You heard that right. A single coin, worth almost $500 million. Let's uncover the wild story behind it. The tale begins in a small town nestled in the hills of Colorado, where a retired geologist named Arthur Mayfield lived a quiet and solitary life. Arthur was a man of routines and relics, someone who spent his evenings cataloging ancient minerals and old coins he'd acquired over the years. He wasn't rich, he wasn't flashy, and he wasn't looking for fame. But one late afternoon in November of 2023, Arthur stumbled upon a coin so unique, so unlike anything he had ever seen, that it set into motion a chain of events no one could have predicted. Arthur had inherited a number of boxes from his grandfather, who had passed away over 20 years ago. The boxes had been collecting dust in the attic of the family's century-old farmhouse. His grandfather had been a collector himself, but mostly of mundane items, tools, books, newspaper clippings, and occasionally coins that were more sentimental than valuable. Arthur decided to go through the boxes before finally selling the property. He didn't expect to find anything of significance. But at the very bottom of the last box, beneath some folded flannel shirts and old baseball cards, he noticed a small metal tin, about the size of a sardine can. It was sealed with a strip of green wax and marked with a strange symbol, an eagle grasping a hammer in its talons. Arthur, being naturally curious, cracked the seal open. Inside the tin were 3 coins. 2 were rusted and unremarkable, but the third, gleaming despite the dust-covered container, immediately caught Arthur's eye. It was a quarter, dated 1985, with the Denver Mint mark. But something about it looked different. The color, the detail, the weight, it was unlike any other quarter Arthur had handled. He held it up to the light and saw that even the edge of the coin shimmered with an iridescent sheen. He grabbed his magnifying glass and began to inspect. What he found startled him. The coin had microscopic inscriptions along the inner rim, invisible to the naked eye. They weren't English. They weren't any modern language at all. They resembled ancient glyphs, like something out of a lost civilization. Arthur's heart began to pound. He weighed the coin and noticed it was heavier than a standard quarter. He took it to a jeweler friend in town, who confirmed the metal was not the usual copper-nickel mix. It wasn't even silver or gold. It was something else. Something the jeweler couldn't identify. Arthur decided to take the coin to a university professor he knew from his days in geology, Dr. Ingrid Lambert, a materials scientist with a penchant for ancient metallurgy. After some persuasion, Ingrid agreed to test the coin in her lab. What she found defied explanation. The coin was made from an ultra-rare alloy consisting of iridium, osmium, and a trace element that didn't even register on her equipment. That last component was completely unknown. Not listed on any scientific chart. It wasn't just rare, it was alien. Word started to spread. Quietly at first. Rumors in academic circles, whispers among coin collectors, and eventually a discreet approach from a mysterious collector known only as R. He contacted Arthur through an anonymous email and offered him $1.2 million, sight unseen. Arthur declined. That same night, someone broke into his farmhouse. They didn't steal anything except the sardine tin, empty now, and Arthur's grandfather's old journals. Arthur, shaken but undeterred, began digging into his grandfather's past. What he discovered changed everything he thought he knew. His grandfather, Elliot Mayfield, had worked briefly for the U.S. Mint in Denver during the early 1980s, part of a top-secret metallurgy project designed to test alternative materials for coinage. The project, codenamed Chronomint, was believed to have been scrapped after cost overruns. But according to his grandfather's journals, it wasn't scrapped. It went underground. Chronomint wasn't just a metal testing program. It was a time-sensitive initiative related to Cold War fears of currency destabilization. The government believed a nuclear attack could wipe out paper currency, so they began exploring advanced coinage that could store data, resist radiation, and even act as a tracking device. The 1985 decoder Arthur found was one of only 7 prototypes ever minted. Each was embedded with nanoscale technology. Each carried encrypted data. And each one was considered a national security asset. Arthur's coin wasn't just valuable for its materials, it contained a lost dataset from the mid-80s, a map encrypted in light frequencies, showing the location of a decommissioned military vault in New Mexico that supposedly held over $3 billion in gold reserves and Cold War intelligence files. As Arthur began to grasp the enormity of what he held, the pressure around him grew. Government agents began following him. Increased his offer to $45 million. Cryptic messages appeared on his phone. Even Dr. Lambert went missing for 3 days, only to return claiming she'd been warned not to continue her research. Despite it all, Arthur pressed forward. He hired a small team of trusted historians and codebreakers, who spent months decoding the data on the coin. They had to use ultraviolet light, thermal imaging, and even sound frequencies to extract layers of encrypted symbols. Slowly, the map began to reveal itself. It pointed to a location deep within the White Sands Missile Range. Arthur made contact with a retired general who had once overseen security at the range. The general, now in his 80s, confirmed that there was indeed an underground chamber known only to top military brass. It was sealed in 1987 and had remained untouched since. Getting access would require political maneuvering and ironclad proof. That proof came when Arthur's team discovered a secondary function of the coin. It acted as a key. Literally. When inserted into a custom-made lock, a design found sketched in his grandfather's journal, it triggered a series of electromagnetic pulses. This signal matched frequencies logged in declassified documents from NORAD, and for the first time in over 3 decades, a clearance code was generated. With help from the general and a sympathetic senator, Arthur gained legal access to the site. On April 4, 2024, he descended into the underground chamber. What they found was beyond belief. The room, about the size of a basketball court, contained dozens of titanium crates stacked in careful precision. Inside were millions in gold bars, ancient documents dating back to World War II, and technology believed to have been reverse-engineered from downed aircrafts, but the real surprise was in the final crate, marked with the same eagle hammer seal from the tin. It contained a ledger. Inside that ledger, in his grandfather's handwriting, was a note, one of 7. Only one was ever meant to be found. If you're reading this, it means the world is ready to know. The coin, now authenticated and tested by multiple international labs, was appraised at a staggering $456 million, not only for its materials and technological enigma but for the unprecedented historical value it carried. Museums, private collectors, and even governments all vied for it. Arthur refused to sell. Instead, he placed it in a foundation designed to study the coin's technology and fund historical preservation. The remaining 6 coins? No one knows where they are. Some believe they were destroyed. Others think they were smuggled out during the final days of the Chronomint project. A few conspiracy theorists even claim they're hidden in plain sight, used by powerful individuals as passkeys to secret bunkers or financial caches. Arthur, now the reluctant steward of a coin that changed history, lives a much different life. He's guarded, measured, and very aware that knowledge, while powerful, can also be dangerous. Yet he continues to follow the threads, hoping to locate the others and unravel the full truth behind the Chronomint project. And so, the legend of the 1985 $250 lives on, not just as a collector's item, but as a symbol of how the smallest things can carry the biggest secrets. In a world where most coins are spent and forgotten, $1/4 defied all expectations and reminded us that history often hides in the most ordinary of places. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, and who knows, maybe there's something just as extraordinary waiting for you in a dusty old box, tucked away, waiting to be discovered.